So wonderful. I'm very excited, by the way, to have a chance to speak with you today. My name is Zubin Chagpar, and I look after Amazon Web Services, or AWS, Middle East and Africa public sector business. I am based in Dubai, and I forgot that it's winter here right now. So this is the limit of the protection that I brought for the cold. So if there's anything you can do about that, please do change the temperature. I went from 50 degrees to 5 degrees within 7 hours. I don't have a presentation because I wanted to speak to you. I wanted to learn from you, and I wanted to share with you what Amazon is doing, Amazon Web Services, specifically around security. Now, by way of introduction, in addition to my day job, formerly I was a board member of ISACA. This was up until last year where I decided that the day job was taking up a lot of activity. ISACA is the organization that helps to train on concepts like auditing and cybersecurity around information systems. So if you're a CISA, anybody here have a CISA or a CISM certification? A few people. Okay, so then we know each other quite well. We studied the same books. And hopefully keeping up with our continued learning as well too, which I think this might count for as well too. In addition to that, I do teach at a business school, IE Business School, where I teach on a concept called rapid innovation. And as we talk about digital transformation and really trying to harness the technology for what it can do for us as we diversify our economies, create new opportunities for people, and really reap the benefits, that balance between the cybersecurity side and handling the risk, as Ms. Hathaway had brought up, and at the same time, making sure that we don't slow down, because we are competing globally on this innovation concept, especially around concepts like 4IR, I think are important as well too. So what I've done is I've actually put together a mind map. Does anybody use mind maps to kind of get their thoughts in place? I see a few people there, so then this should help. So what I'd like to cover with you, and I'd like to make it as much as possible interactive. So if you have a question or you have a concern, just yell it out. I'm going to cover 5 myths, because that's the topic of the conversation, dispelling top security myths. So I'll cover 5 myths. And then I'd like to divulge a little bit into partners, skills development, which is very near and dear to our heart as well too, especially in South Africa. The opportunity in front of us, and then some closing thoughts as well. Does that sound fine? Great, 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 great. So let me tell you a little bit about AWS and our history, and our particular history here in South Africa. So Amazon Web Services is part of Amazon, the company itself. And it started about 13 years ago. And it started because we had this business that sold books. Has anybody bought a book? Yeah. Anybody bought a book on Amazon? Anybody bought a book from Professor Marwala on Amazon during his talk? Is he still here? Because I actually did buy the book, and I will be reading it. It's actually going to be delivered by tomorrow. It's the one on machine learning, which I'm very eager to learn more about from his own words. So when we were building this system out, we realized is that by about 2003, our very robust e-commerce site was getting very long in the tooth. And because of that, some very bright engineers decided to say, well, what can we do to decouple those relationships? What can we do so that when we try to make a change, it doesn't mean bringing down the entire system or putting up a note that says under maintenance right now. So we were able to decouple that architecture. And we effectively ended up creating services, hence the name Amazon Web Services. Because when you do that, you can say, hey, we can offer this to partners, to customers. And the constituency that really grasped this was the developer community. Because now they can get access to resources very easily. They can go and build something and then put it out in the market and get feedback on it right away. So that whole procurement cycle, that long time to get hardware was just gone at the blink of an eye. And you can literally get things out to potential customers or users in moments. So that led to the birth of Amazon Web Services. And then fantastic people on the analyst community side called that cloud. And that's how cloud computing was born. This distributed system, on-demand system, pay-as-you-go system was available starting back then. So it's been about 13 years. It's been an incredible journey. I've been part of that for 5 years. And the team here in South Africa has also been working on that too. Now, I mentioned South Africa as having a special part of this story. So as we started building this out, if you think of services themselves, services are just available, similar to building blocks. So if you're building something, you just build on top of them, and you can create wonderful solutions. That primary building block is the compute side. Another one is storage, and another one is network. That compute side was actually born in South Africa. So some of our bright engineers, back in 2003-2004 period, one of them said, hey, I want to go back to South Africa, so I'm going to be leaving the company. And I said, well, why are you leaving the company? Well, he said, I just told you, I want to go back to South Africa. And he said, well, just build it out of South Africa. So he put together his team, and now we have Amazon Web Services, and to today, we're still building out that compute portion of it here in South Africa, along with other services as well. There's about 160 plus services now available where you can build on top of that. And those services can be compute, but it can also be solutions around machine learning, artificial intelligence, blockchain, storage as well too. So today we're very proudly South African, as much so as a global company as well too. So by design, we've been building this out for all these years. And now I'm going to move into those myths that I mentioned. So I'm going to cover 5 myths. I'm not naive to believe that I'm going to cover all of the concerns that people might have with cloud computing, but I hope this begins a dialogue. And I'm very excited that a lot of our team members are here today too. They'll be here to talk to you afterwards as well, and ongoing as well. We have offices in Joburg and in Cape Town as well too. I hope I'm allowed to say Joburg. I feel like I've been acclimatized. I've been here so many times. I can say Johannesburg if that's required as well too. So the myths that I'm going to touch on are on-premise versus on-premise being more secure than in the cloud. Ownership of data, your data. Regulated industries and the ability not to go into cloud because they're regulated. Businesses that require sensitive personal data and not necessarily being able to put that in the cloud. And then your own security testing requirements as well too, which I think is very important as well. So those are the myths that I'll cover. So starting with the on-premise point, we've heard a lot from Ms. Hathaway, from Thomas, from Professor Marwala today about these attacks, about these vulnerabilities that are out there. And I would submit to you that those vulnerabilities or those attacks are almost always summed up into 5 specific situations. And this is one where you can disagree with me as well too, but I'll submit those 5 to you right now. Unpatched systems, keeping up with patches. There's issues all the time in terms of software requiring a very important patch or firmware. So I'll submit that as one, unpatched systems and not keeping up with patches. Security misconfigurations. We've got access to firewalls, and we've got access to intrusion detection systems and all these wonderful tools, but there's a human component to that. And if we misconfigure, that ends up being another situation. Passwords. Who here has changed their password for their internal system, whether it's at the university or a government agency or at an enterprise over the last 30 days? Well, good for you. Wonderful. And thank you, Ms. Hathaway, as well, too. That's good to see. But that often is one, too, in terms of changing your passwords, but also the level of security that you put in your password. My daughter's name, Rebecca, plus her birthday. That happens. That might be happening right now as well, too. So think about other concepts as well, too. Social engineering. We know this happens quite a bit. You receive something in the mail. We just heard about the attack that happened in the Middle East a couple years ago to a large oil company. That was a social engineering. At least that was part of how that attack came in and how the malware was inserted into their systems and brought them down for a long time, several weeks, not months, months, yeah. And insider threats, whether it's accidental or malicious, that's where a lot of these attacks come from. Any other ones that I might miss? Because I'm just going to update this right here too. In general, is that what do you guys feel about when you look at security in your organizations? Supply chain, yeah, partners that you're working with as well too, and supply chain. So that's a 6th one, and I will update this too. Thank you for that. So to talk about how this is addressed and how this can be addressed in the cloud, I'm going to give you a little bit about what an AWS deployment in the cloud looks like. So AWS, Amazon Web Services, is the largest provider of cloud computing by infrastructure, by services, and many other metrics. We have 60 plus availability zones around the world, global. We've got 20 regions that encompass these availability zones. Now, each one of these availability zones have data centers inside them. And of course, these data centers have hundreds, if not thousands, of racks inside them as well too. This is also augmented by edge locations too. These edge locations allow us in various regions that we operate in to provide services to our customers, but at the same time, it allows us to mitigate attacks as well too. Think about denial of service is another point that was brought up as well too. So that footprint is what a customer would enter to, an organization would enter to when they use cloud computing. Now, as part of our ongoing investment into South Africa, we're actually bringing one of these regions to South Africa next year. We're very excited about that. We announced this during the President's Investment Conference last year as well too. So we'll continue to invest in South Africa, and that will bring that cloud computing capability closer. But even today, we work with many organizations in South Africa that are using cloud computing. Anybody shop at Pick n Pay? Why are you not shopping at Pick n Pay? It's a great place. You should spend time there. They're using that. They've moved into the cloud because they want to be able to offer better services to their customers. And to do that, they need to consolidate their footprint, and they also want to lower their costs. That's where cloud comes in as well too. Recently, Standard Bank said that they want to, they're prioritizing their journey into the cloud, specifically on AWS. But not only that, what they want to do is change their culture to align with innovation so that they can offer more services to their customers as well. And they see that being enabled by those technologies that we heard Professor Marwala talk about earlier as well too. And Vodacom just announced a few weeks ago that they will be one of our largest partners in Africa, and they'll work with us to co-create services. So this is leading from South Africa as well too. So those are examples of people and organizations and companies and customers using cloud today with our partners. So I'll submit to you that if we think about cloud being less secure than on-premise, I'll ask another question to you as well too, because I know I'm guilty of this in my career. I've worked at companies like VeriSign when I was on the security side and other organizations. I know that I've done this. Has anybody had a server sit under their desk that's either sitting in the DMZ or even on the network that they're using because they use it as a bastion host to be able to access services, sometimes even maybe so they could work from home and just tunnel into that location? Anybody do that? Has anybody done that? Thank you for being honest, sir. I mean, that's sometimes tough to put up your hand for that. But I actually recognize you too. I think you're from Amazon. I hope you're not doing that right now. Okay, no, good, awesome, fantastic. So I would say that that accountability or that understanding of your footprint in your organization is difficult to maintain if you're maintaining your own data centers. Now, when you move into the cloud, you do have that visibility of your entire footprint. You're able to spin up. This runs on a virtual environment, so you're able to spin up. If you see something that through your monitoring, through your automation, that is showing you that something is not acting properly, you can bring that down and you can spin up a new, fully patched instance as well too. I'm oversimplifying here, and there's a deeper conversation here as well too, but I would submit that you have that level of flexibility and control. So I would say that you're able to automate a lot more. We talked in Thomas's talk, he talked about automation as being key. One, because of the lack of security professionals, which I aim to address as well too. That's an opportunity for all of us here in South Africa. But also because automation itself removes a level of human error. And instead, the human actually gets to monitor and react and put in systems in place that can react as well too when those attacks happen. So one takeaway is automation. Those policies ensure that you can put in the right level of controls to ensure that Kalani up there doesn't put his server onto the network. You can look for that and search for it and make sure that you have the right level of controls as well too. It comes down to having a large perimeter that you're responsible for when you're on premise versus having more of a, what I would call a micro blast radius. If something does happen here, you can shut that down as quickly as possible, almost to the device level because of its running on instances as well. So I'll just jump to the next one here. I'll talk about ownership of data. I know that one comes up quite a bit. Who owns the data? You. It's absolutely your data, whether you put it in a cloud locally or in another region or somewhere else, it's your data. It's a very important concept that cloud providers do not have access to your data unless you explicitly grant access to that data. That also opens up another situation here. Your responsibility. That data is not automatically protected because it happens to be on a system that's patched. You have to make sure that everything you put in the cloud is fully secure. This can be through access lists, This can be through encryption, tokenization, whatever concept you want to do, but that's where the opportunity lies for cybersecurity skilled professionals, and that's where you need to address this from a well thought out way in terms of how you're going to secure your data. I would volunteer in this section too that you want to encrypt everything, at rest or in motion. Sometimes the argument might be that if you encrypt everything, that's going to add an extra burden or extra cost or lower speed. And I would say that now we're at a point where that's just not true. For almost all applications, you can encrypt everything, decrypt when you need to process, and encrypt again as well too. In motion and in rest as well too. In fact, in our network, our global network, we even encrypt at the layer 2 level as well too. Your data, on top of whatever you're doing as well. So the data is not transferring unless it's encrypted. So encrypt, encrypt, encrypt. And then I'll just leave 2 other concepts on this topic, tokenization. So if you are going to put something in cloud and you do have a legitimate concern, you can start with tokenization and remove specific information that is pertinent to user data, and then take that out and put a token in place. And then the final thing on that is decomposition. So in cloud, at least in our deployment of it, when you go over 64K of data, all of that is it's spread out, if that makes sense. So that in that situation, the decomposition concept means that even if there was a request, a legitimate request for data from an authority that went through all the rigorous requirements to ask for it, including the mutual agreements between 2 countries to get it, in that case, if you've encrypted, and even in that decomposition, us as the provider of the cloud solution will have a very difficult time to provide that over to authorities. And of course, you'll be notified, and you can act on it as well too. Very nuanced conversation, one that we're happy to take up as well too, with you today and into the future. Regulated industries, another myth that regulated industries can't go into cloud. I've already alluded to banking and telecoms. We've seen governments using cloud, whether in their country or outside as well too. The UK government's a great example of this. I would highlight, again, something that Thomas mentioned. Is Thomas still here? I don't know if he's still here. Thomas had said a very good point that just keeping up with all these compliance requirements, which doesn't guarantee security, it creates sort of a bar of compliance, is difficult to do, especially if you're doing this on-premise. For cloud solutions, specifically on AWS, we've gone through those motions. We've worked with authorities, we've worked with agencies globally, countries. I can cite ISO, PCI compliance, SOC 1 and 2, FedRAMP, Cyber Essentials, IRAP. We've worked with the Singapore government, and we'd love to work with the South Africa government if there's something there that we can address as well too. But I would submit that all those put you at a different layer, at the cloud layer, in terms of when you're looking at security. And that should help quite a bit as you deploy, so you can focus on your data rather than the hardware and the equipment, but also focus on your activities of why you're actually building services for citizens, for customers, and so forth. We're down through 3, and I'm going to go to 2 more left. Your requirement puts sensitive data. I won't belabor this point, but encryption is a key part of that. And encryption doesn't mean that you just trust the provider in the cloud to provide encryption. You can also deploy solutions where you have your own keys on site and on premise. So you encrypt and decrypt with your own keys, leaving it on premise, but it goes into the cloud as well too. Data classification is very important here too. Spend the time and work with the regulatory bodies to understand what you're classifying here. What can and what cannot go in the cloud. And then I'll highlight again that the concept of key management as being a key one as well too. Pun not intended. And then finally on security testing requirements. You can still do the testings that you require when it's in cloud as well too. You can work with the cloud provider to ensure that you're doing the scans. That's one where we ask for permission because we don't want to disrupt other customers that sit in the cloud, but you can also scan your own environment, and you can also develop your SecOps environment too, so that you can be doing constant testing, automation, reaction, log management. Log management is another key one through. I will highlight the ability to log everything. And I'll stress one final point as I went through the myths right here, is that one thing that cloud provides you is you go from this hardware, software, application-based design to APIs. So as you're coding, you're actually calling on resources, and what that provides is probably the ideal choke point for anything you're doing. Those APIs themselves, that's where you can audit. So if a call is made where you're not expecting a call, you can stop it right there. You can mitigate it right there, or you can at least investigate why that was happening as well too. So this concept, this redesign of how we deploy solutions, as we start moving into this 4th industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, that particular concept is super important to pick at and understand that and see if that's something that meets your needs as well too. So I've addressed all those myths, and again, I don't believe that I'll cover everything, but we would love to continue the conversation and dialogue with you. I do want to highlight that when we talk about cloud computing, particularly on AWS, it's not just us by ourselves. We work very closely with regulators around the world. We work very closely with partners. Super important. Dimension Data, a fantastic partner. If you go outside, please do go outside and talk to some of those different organizations out there. They're all partners, whether it's Semantic or Checkpoint. They're all available in the cloud, and you can use them in the cloud. So use what you're familiar with. Anybody here have a VMware environment? Anybody working? I see a few hands up there as well too. VMware Cloud sits on top of AWS and allows you to have that environment that you're comfortable with, limit the amount of training and refactoring and recoding that you need as you move to the cloud, and then reap the benefit of those native cloud services. Again, stuff around data analytics, big data, artificial intelligence. I'm throwing all the buzzwords at you, but they're all available as well too as you move forward. Let me address, and I'm just doing a time check looking over here. I'm seeing some smiles, which is fantastic. Let me just address a couple more things, and I'm off the stage. So skills development. If you take anything away from what we're talking about here, please prioritize this one right here. We are very excited. We're working with organizations. We're working with the Department of Higher Education and Training, working with universities like the University of Johannesburg, and University of Western Cape, University of Pretoria, and other ones as well too, to get the next group of folks that understand this area of not just cloud computing, but cybersecurity and all these other benefits as well too of going into the fourth industrial revolution. I cannot stress how important this part of it is. I'll speak from a business perspective. We do not have a business if South Africa does not have a core of workers that understand this area and create those high-paying jobs that go into this area for us, for our partners, for our customers as well too. But even more importantly, all these things we're talking about comes from understanding these concepts in cloud computing, in artificial intelligence, in cybersecurity concerns as well too. So if you're from the education space today, we'd love to continue to speak with you and make sure that we're addressing that area and we're doing our part to invest in that space. One thing I will talk about is opportunity. The opportunity is about making sure that we're secure, but also about that agility and that scalability as we grow together. As Ms. Hathaway had mentioned, every country is thinking about fourth industrial revolution. It's coming up quite a bit at the minister level, at the country level, at the business level, at the individual level. Everybody's doing that. Let's make sure that we have that right level of speed and prudence as well too. And I'll highlight one thing that we're working on that we'd love to talk to you about is that we're bringing some of this training that I mentioned before, where we're working with universities. We're bringing it through a program we're developing called ICASI. And depending on how good your language skills are, that means township. And we're working in the townships right now. We're deploying programs that we're spinning out to make sure that people have access to these technologies too and are building. It's not so much about just training and learning, but it's also about doing and building. And that's where we're spending a lot of our time. So for closing thoughts, and thank you for the extra time, if there was extra time, please implement strong identity foundations. Invest on that side. Make sure who's accessing your environment, and you're actually tracing that as well. Enable traceability and logging. Apply security at all levels and encryption at all levels as well too, as we talked about. Continue the conversation. Speak with us as well too, whether it's on concepts like data residency or data sovereignty. We're here to discuss that and see how we can address together. Keep people away from data, whether it's in the supply chain, whether it's your own people, whether it's vendors. Keep them as far away as possible, and instead focus on automation technology and let the people focus on the strategy. Protect your data at rest and transit, as we discussed. Prepare for security events. They do happen, as we learned today as well too. So get those mitigations in place. And also, I just want to highlight, we can't do this alone. We're learning from you as well too. So please do speak to us. We're here for the rest of the day and tomorrow as well too. Thank you for that.